Welcome to the Heart of Money podcast, where we discuss the impact that money has on every area of your life and where you can learn to make smarter money decisions. Join our conversation as we discuss our past experiences, talk about how to make better money management choices, and in the end, make a commitment to being weird. Hey folks, welcome back to the Heart of Money, episode 50. I am your host, Austin Black, and I am so excited to have a special guest with me this morning, Mr. Tony Bradshaw. Tony believes that there should only be two types of people in the world, millionaires and future millionaires. I agree with that. He helps move his future millionaires from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset and lifestyle. Tony grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and realized in his early 20s that he was mismanaging his money and knew that something needed to change. So he learned how to handle his money by his mid 20s and became a millionaire by age 40. And now he's helping everyone he can make the choice to create their millionaire plan. So, Tony, I am so excited to have you be part of the show because it sounds like we have a lot in common. We have very similar stories. You've got a background with Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey is one of my big heroes. So I think we have a lot of just mutually similar philosophies and understanding of everything. So I'm really excited to have you on. Welcome to the Heart of Money.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Austin. I really appreciate it.
So I know that you've had a really unique story in just what you've done, where you've been, who you've been a part of. Just kind of share with us where you've come from, what you learned. In your 20s, there you sound like you had a lot of things going on, and I know that as your experience, with Dave Ramsey and with your own brand, you've learned a lot, you've done a lot, you've seen a lot. So just walk us through how everything got started and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I grew up in a low-income family here in Nashville. It's kind of funny because so many people are moving to Nashville from out of state right now. They're coming from California, from Chicago, from New York, from Pennsylvania. You just name it, and they're coming to Nashville. It's one of the hot places. But, growing up, it wasn't like that. It was, especially the area I lived in, it was a lower income area. Most of the houses, my friends lived in broken homes. Several of my friends had drug dealers for fathers. And when I say drug dealer, not like major corporate type drugs where they were moving, but, like soft peddling on the side, just like extra income type stuff.
Yeah.
One of my friends had his dad back when pot was a no-no, right? When marijuana was a no-no, was growing pot plants in his closet with a grow light. And mainly for his own consumption. I got another friend who wasn't actually a peddler of drugs. So, that was the life we grew up in. We had, drug dealers that lived across the street. I remember looking outside the window one night. I believe I was probably about 12. My sister was probably about 6, about, a few years younger than me. She's about 5 or 6 years younger than me. And we're looking out the window through the shades, the blinds. Look, 2 little kids. And there's this group of people out later than they should be. We're supposed to be in bed sleeping, and we're looking out the window, and they're got this white stuff on the car, and they're basically dealing drugs. Dealing drugs on the car across the street. And then later, as I was a little bit older, there was a shootout from one drug family up 2 or 3 doors up the street with another drug family, and somebody got killed. And that was the life I grew up in. My dad and my mom worked really, really hard. They didn't make a lot of money, but they made enough, and were able to, give us a better standard of living than they themselves had. I believe, both my parents came from broken homes. So they didn't have stability, and they didn't have good role models in their lives as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the background and the fabric, that I grew up with. And then what I found, my parents did get me started working early. They did have a very strong work ethic. And so I remember going on job sites with my dad. He was a carpenter, start by cleaning floors, sweeping floors. That's the job everybody has to learn to do first. If you can't sweep a floor, you can't do anything. So you got to learn how to sweep a floor. And so I'd clean up on my dad's job sites. My mom, on the other hand, I would catch the school bus sometimes at her workplace. She managed convenience stores for a while when I was probably between like ages 8 and maybe older, in my 20s. She was still doing that type of work. And I would get off the school bus and be sitting around at the convenience store. And so I would have to, do some work at the convenience store. She'd have me restock shelves, do things, carry out trash. And when I wasn't doing that, I was reading magazines off the magazine racks. And that's where I learned how to Learned how to fish. They had fishing magazines, so I learned how to become a bass fisherman from reading those magazines. And then I started teaching neighborhood kids, the tricks to catching bass and telling them where to fish and how to fish. And cars is where I learned to work on cars. I rebuilt my first car engine when I was about 14, 15 years old. Got in a big fight with my dad about it because I was reading the manuals and how to do things, and he was just doing based on what he knew. And so
Right.
I'm rebuilding the engine, and he got mad at me and just left. And so I'm like, fine, I'll do it myself. And that led me into engineering. So, going off to college, my parents really pushed me to go to college. And I'm figuring, I'm good in math. I like cars. That sounds like engineering. Let's go do engineering. And that was about as much thought as I put into deciding what to do for college. But I really enjoyed it, man. I enjoyed getting an engineering degree. Worked pretty hard at it. I didn't realize I could be an A student. I was more of a ABC student. But I should have been a straight A student, but I didn't put the work in. It takes work and talent. Talent alone doesn't get it done. You need work and talent. And so, but I was happy with my grades, at least somewhat happy, but I never really realized my full potential. And it wasn't until later that I started, accepting the fact that, hey, your potential is really limited by your own mindset. Your potential, and I don't care who that is, I don't care what walk of life you grew up in. That's the story I hear again and again and again from successful people. And many people I interview on my show actually had stories that were much worse than mine, like much more troublesome, and we can talk about some of those. I'm just like, wow, like, how did you get where you were from that? Like, that's just like a miracle in and of itself. But for me, even though my parents gave me, invested in me, they empowered me, they taught me a lot of good things, they never really taught me how to manage money. And it wasn't until I got out of college, I got my first full year as a graduate on my job, and I made $39,000. And I got that W-2 form, and I looked at it, and I'm like, I made $39,000. And I took inventory. I just paused, and I'm like, I'm about $16,000 in debt, about 13 grand on the car, about three grand on credit cards. And I'm living with my mom and dad in a studio bedroom apartment, paying $200 a month in rent. I've got a bed that I put together with my own two hands. I bought posts and 2x6s from Home Depot, made my own bed frame, bought my $99 mattress or whatever I paid for it back then. And I had a desk that my dad built for me. I had a nice TV that I paid for, really nice stereo. Like, I invested heavily in electronics because my philosophy was, I'm going to get married someday. My wife's probably going to invest in furniture. Women like comfort. I'm going to bring the electronics. And so I invested in electronics, and that's exactly how it played out. My wife got married. My wife had the couch. She had the nice bed. I had the crappy bed, and I brought the electronics. So I furnished the living room to some extent, and she furnished the rest. And but holding that W-2, it really hit me. I'm like, wow, like, I've got about $500 in my bank account, and I've made that much money. Like, where did it all go? Like, that's terrible. Like, I can't repeat what I did that year. I can never repeat again in my lifetime. Like, that's the mindset that shifted for me. And so that's where I did what I knew. I mentioned I learned about fishing, and I learned about cars and how to work on cars. So I did the only thing I knew to do at the time. And I just went to the bookstore and started buying money magazines and started reading about money magazines, reading about investing, debt, learned about mutual funds, learned a little bit about real estate, not a lot. I didn't really buy real estate magazines. I more or less bought stocks and mutual funds. And that was the information I was armed with. And then, being an engineer, I took that information, sat down and put a spreadsheet together. And I said, I have this much money. And if I chop it up this way, maybe a third into living, a third into debt, and a third into investing, I think I can be a millionaire by age 40 if I do these things this way. And I laid that all out in a spreadsheet, and then made that plan. And that's what I started with. And, and it was a little bit naive. I was, newly minted future millionaire at the time, but it got me moving. It got me moving in the right direction. And that's the big thing. That was the mindset shift that has to happen for people to leave the past behind and embrace something new, leaving scarcity behind, which is what I was living in, and embracing more of an abundance mindset. And then, the rest is kind of, history. Your life kind of develops. I did engineering for about 6 years and got into computers. made the jump to technology, decided to leave the engineering life behind, got into the internet development side of things, and that's when I joined Dave Ramsey's team in 2001, armed with just enough information to be dangerous. And if my budget didn't match their budget, I think everybody else was asking for 50 grand a year at that time. This is 2001.
Yeah.
I asked for 35 grand, so I got the job. And back then, the money was a little tighter at the Ramsey organization than
Yes.
it is these days. And yeah, and then so that's where it grew, and I got into leadership, did some stuff, and then left there in 2016, and never really planned on getting back into personal finance, Austin. I just really had it was not on my radar. I was not planning to go back into personal finance. And then, I'm sitting out in Salt Lake City working, looking out over the snow-capped mountains. If anybody on this show wants to go snow skiing, snowboarding, go to Salt Lake City. It's awesome. There's so many different mountains out there. And I'm looking out over those mountains, and I'm sitting there working on a different book, more of a success book. And I just heard this little voice in my head, call it Holy Spirit, call it whatever you want. And I'm like, I heard, not that book, not right now. And I'm like, okay, if not that book, what am I going to write? And then I heard personal finance book. And that was the beginnings of the Millionaire Choice in May of 2017. And, it took me, I naively thought I was going to have this book done, written, and complete in like 60 days or 6 months, have it on the bookshelves. Right.
Yeah.
And sadly, that's not how it works. I wrote the
Right.
draft pretty quickly, and then about 12 months of editing after that, and I didn't think that was ever going to end. And then,
Wow.
it came out in November, December 2018. And my show came out the Millionaire Choice show came out in 2020, right around COVID, right as COVID was getting fired up. And we're coming up on 100 episodes. I think you're coming up on 50 episodes. So congratulations to that.
Thank you. That is such an incredible story, and I love so many parts of that because it is so similar to my personal story. I didn't grow up in the same background and everything as you mentioned, but just the lack of teaching from financially I can relate to. Our timelines. I was in my, I think I was like 23 or 24 when I realized that I was not handling money right. I was 25 or 26 when I finally kind of got it together. I am on track, within the next 10 years to be, by my early 40s, should be millionaire net worth. So I feel like I can relate so much personally to your story and to what you experienced, what you have been through. And a lot of it, like you said, hangs on that mindset, because that was the big thing for me personally too, was just acknowledging the fact that it didn't have to be the way that it was, that I could change it, that I had the option, I had the choice. Yeah, I would take the talent and the hard work, but it was my choice. And I've been on other shows in the past where I have kind of had that question asked of, was it changing your behavior or changing your mindset? And there was a little bit of both for me, but it was mainly that mindset and that belief system. What I really enjoyed about what you shared there was the fact that even though you came from where you did, your past and your background under normal circumstances would not put you where you are today. And I've heard a lot of people talk about, their past is what it is, and that's just the way things are. Whether they have to live in debt or whether they can, retire with wealth or whatever the case is, they focus so much on their past being their identity and being who they are because of where they are. And you obviously, made a big change in that and began to adjust to create your future what you wanted it to be. One of the things that I tell people a lot of times is it's okay if you made mistakes in the past because you probably were taught wrong or you weren't taught at all. And now it's your choice to learn the correct way, to make that change, make that modification. With your experience, how big of a role did your past play in dictating where you ended up going?
Yeah, I think when I wrote my book, The Millionaire Choice, the interesting thing is the first two chapters really have nothing to do with money. It has to
Mhm.
do with character, and it's called Develop Strong Characters. Millionaire Key number 1, Millionaire Key number 2 is maximize your time. And so once you realize that it's the difference between and it's not the only difference, right? Because you have to have the mindset shift, and you have to, as a teacher or a mentor, doing what we do, you have to acknowledge that certain people, depending on how they brought up, they're struggling with the different mindset issues on a whole nother level. And
Right.
and you have to acknowledge that you can't just whitewash it and go, oh man, anybody can do this. Anyone can do it, but different people face different struggles based on their background, their upbringing, even generational. You could call it generational curses if you want to, but just that consistency. So my past, for me, the way I'm wired is I don't really remember my past that well. I'm always
Yeah.
thinking about the future and like what's next. So I'm a very, very strategically focused and visionary type person. What I realized as I'm teaching people is most people are not visionary. So they
Hmm.
can't create something new and different in their future because they're not visionary. They need somebody to help them create that vision that they can latch onto. And that's just, if you break down personal demographics of just the average person, that holds very true, right? So
Yes.
not everybody is a visionary, and that's perfectly okay. But what you have to do is you still have to get a vision for your life if you want it to be different. That's why I love Dave Ramsey stuff. Some people knock on Dave because they don't agree with his investing advice or the way he, maybe it's 12% with mutual
Hmm.
funds. I know people get 20%. That's what they do. They
Right.
don't do mutual funds, but they get 20% on their investments. So they just think differently, right? So you got to learn. Now, those people have evolved from, early stages to later stages. They've gotten what I call money smart, and they've continued to get money smart over their lifetime. And therefore they can get those 20% returns versus 12. But what Dave is doing is he is giving people a vision, and the vision is to become debt free. He's helping them latch on to a vision for their future and their life. And it's like, I can be debt free. Dave Ramsey tells me I can be debt free. I believe that.
Yeah.
So they're grabbing a hold, and what I say is they're borrowing. They're
Hmm.
borrowing Dave's vision for their life because they don't have one. And that's perfectly okay. For me, I'm trying to give people a vision that they can become a millionaire. Now, for a lot of people, that's a difficult jump. The way I look at it is you've got 4 money buckets. The first bucket is just broke. The second
Hmm.
bucket is just getting by, like I can pay my bills. The third bucket becomes the future millionaire bucket. And then you got the millionaire bucket. And some people say, oh, well, what about the billionaire bucket? Well, if you can get there, that's fine. Go for that. But that's not the majority. Only about
Right.
300,000 people in the U.S. have net worths over $25 million. So we're talking about what's applicable for the vast majority of Americans and possibly, hopefully, for other people in the world. But it's very difficult to go from a broke mindset and a broke lifestyle to a future millionaire mindset and a future. That's a bigger jump. It's
Yes.
much easier, I think, to go, oh, I can go from being broke to just getting my bills paid. Like if I can just pay my bills, my life's going to be a
Right.
whole lot better. Or if I can just get out of debt, my life's going to be a whole lot better. And that's perfectly fine because that at least gets people in the game of finance. That gets them
Yes.
focused, that gets them learning. So your original question was, how much did my past play? Um, I think I let go of my past pretty quickly. I would say my habits had to take time to get rid of, right?
Yeah.
Getting rid of the old bad habits that keep us in those places. You have to take those bad habits and list them out and go, you know what? I'm not going to spend all my money every time I get a paycheck. I'm not going
Right.
to buy the new thing that I've been thinking about for 6 months. I don't really need that thing. So you have to shut down those bad habits and replace them with new habits. And I think it becomes a lot easier when you have a goal in front of you, like, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire by age 40. This is how I'm going to do it. And, and the thing, you're going to hit curves on the way, right? So
Right.
I didn't have a line item in my budget for marriage. I did not have a line item in my budget for my future wife's debt, which was like
Hmm.
$20,000. I did not have a line item for the house that she wanted to live in. And I did not have a line item for 6 kids, and diapers. By the way, I
Yeah.
tried to get my wife to do cloth diapers because I had calculated how much it cost to do those disposable diapers. I'm like, shoot,
Yep.
I can buy 6 diapers for this kid and wash them every week and
Yep.
save, $1,500, And she's like, no, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, yes, ma'am. I agree. I think that's okay. And so,
That sounds so
so we
familiar.
did, we did the disposables, we did disposables, but that wasn't in my plan, but that's okay because, the wonderful thing happens when you set a goal and you set a vision and you put some action behind it, is I think the human mind is so amazing because it's like it puts a problem in front of it and it
Mhm.
works on that problem, and I think, universally too, I think, there's some God factor in it, but there's other things that go at play when you get something in front of you like that, where you're going, hey, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And you start charting that course. Now, to a lesser degree, my wife, it was, I'm telling a bad story here on myself, but my wife, when I walked in and told her, I said, hey, guess what? We're millionaires. And she goes, what? Like, what are you talking about? Because
Uh-huh.
I had never shared my vision with my wife. I never shared it with her.
Yeah.
It wasn't until we were there that she's like, oh, oh, oh. So she's still processing, like, why? What are we talking about here? Because
Uh-huh.
she didn't think that way. She had been through Dave's program multiple times, and so
Mhm.
she and I were aligned on our financial mindset overall. Like, we
Yeah.
weren't going out and wasting money and spending money and stuff. So we were philosophically aligned on the basics of finance, but I never gave her that vision. Now, in this next version of us, like, what's next for us, we are sharing that vision together, and she's praying into that vision with me, and we're embracing that together. But that was something I didn't do on the front end, and didn't know to do, honestly.
Yeah. I love that you talk so much about vision because as a coach, that's my very first framework that I teach is you have to develop your vision. That's the first step in accomplishing any type of financial independence, security, change. If you don't know where you're wanting to go, you're never going to get there. But I also really enjoy you broke it down to those buckets because it is so hard. I've had the question asked before, back early on, did I plan on being where I am now 10 years from or 10 years ago? And the answer is no, because I was focused on something else at that time. But it was a dream and a wish and a goal, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. And whenever you lay out those four buckets, that is so simple to understand because so many people they start in that broke or getting by stage, and to them, for one thing, millionaire is not even on the radar table. That's just we're not hasn't even crossed our mind right now. We just want to get ahead and be able to be comfortable and be able to have a little bit to save and maybe a little bit to invest, but let's take care of this month right now. And it is really difficult to think that long-term pattern, and I think that's where a lot of people get bogged down by the current and sometimes the past if they're hanging on to that, and if they aren't able to let go like you and I have done, it's sometimes an obstacle to say, well, yeah, that took place, but now this can happen if you change your mindset, change your behaviors, and change your dreams and your goals to accomplish this. And then little by little, they begin to take that progression. They begin to get the wins. Their mindset begins to evolve. Their behaviors begin to change and adapt. And before you know it, you look up and oh my gosh, we're debt free. We've got our investments going. We are going to retire millionaire plus. It just begins to compound. So I really appreciate you breaking that down into that simple format that's so relatable and things that just speak to me, speak to our audience, are very applicable to the way that the mind works around money. Um, one of the things that you said there at the end that I think is very very important to anyone's journey. You talk about sharing it with your wife, and the fact that you didn't early on, you are now. I know a lot of couples that I work with that listen to this show. The very beginning part, it's so hard. It's maybe not so hard, but they don't know how to have that conversation to get on the same page. That's what I do. I work a lot with helping folks do that. But I like to hear from your standpoint. What were some key components that you wish you would have done early on to with your wife to have that communication, and what are you doing now to make that be a part of both of your missions?
Yeah, I think the couple of things that have really shifted for me more recently, and some of this is not stuff that I would have, maybe you could say I would have liked to done it differently early on. I think we have to go through an evolution process. Um,
Mhm.
you know, when I had my eyeballs set on becoming a millionaire, um, that was as far as I could, like, get my head around. Right, so I'm going from broke to millionaire. That's a big jump. Now, I know
Yes.
some people that go from broke to thinking like they just go like 10 million, let's 10, 20 million. Like we're going for 20 million. I got some friends, 33, 34 years old, net worth 25 to $50 million. And they were broke. Like
Holy
they're broke
cow.
at 21, $50 million at like 32. So they did not let their mindsets or their upbringing limit them on what they thought the possibilities were. And they were able
Mhm.
to achieve much more. Now it's going to be different for different people. So you don't set somebody else's standard as your standard. I only use that example because I hate it when people make excuses that hold them back. And
Right.
so when somebody I start talking about finance or millionaire, I get several responses very quickly. One is oh you got lucky. And I'm like, no, I didn't get lucky. I went to college.
Right.
I worked really hard for 6 years as an engineer. I spent $1,000 to get the software I needed so that I could learn how to program. I went to work for another guy, changing jobs, at the tech boom, and decided, and I took a pay cut, a 25% pay cut to take this risk on that I
Yep.
thought was going to play out in the digital age. And then I became a leader of a leadership team, and I made money, and on and on and on. There's a lot of work that goes into success, and people who are not there just go, oh, you got lucky, right place, right
Right.
time. It's all crap. That's all just crap. It's not true.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe some people do get lucky, but that's not the norm. It's the hard work, the effort, the constant focus, and then even in the middle of that, something plays out right. So I don't like people who look at other people and go, oh, that guy's got lucky. No, he just did a repeatable process. That's what I find when
Mhm.
I talk to people. It's a repeatable process. That's why I say anyone can become a millionaire, anyone in the United States. Now, if you go overseas, you're in China, that's a different story. You don't have
Yeah.
a capitalist, you have a communistic regime. You go to other countries, they don't have the same opportunities that we have in the United States. But I've interviewed a lot of people that left other countries, came to the United States, boom, became millionaires. Um, so you asked me my original question, what would I change? One, I would get on the same page with my wife. Now, what I find is that many times and I think Dave teaches us well, you got in different ways. He says you got a spender and you got a saver. That's a
Mhm.
great way of saying you got somebody who's money conscious and somebody who's not money conscious.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. So in our family, I'm a numbers person. My wife's not a numbers person. Numbers scare her. She doesn't like them. She doesn't do well with math. It's difficult. So if I come at that problem from a math standpoint, then I'm not on the, it's hard to get somebody on the same page with you. And she paid me one of the greatest compliments I could ever say is when she read my book. She was the last one to read and edit my book. And she's like, this is what you were thinking for 15 years, 18 years. She's like, I get it. She's like, I get it. She had been through some other people's financial material and didn't get it. So now what
Yeah.
happens, and I think this is key, right? How do you get on the same page with your spouse? And I think it starts with vision, but also empowerment, some basic understanding. So I'm the financial guy. I'm the one that does investments. My wife invested for the first time last year. So I had been talking to her, doing this teaching. I'm moving in this direction. She comes to me and she goes, hey, I made an investment. And I'm like, that's great. What did you get? And then she's learning, right? Now she's learning.
Mhm.
Now she gets upset because she's on that roller coaster ride right now, right? She bought it last
Right.
year. Things were going up. Now they're going down. Now she's going, oh, everything's in the red. I don't feel good. I'm like, baby, that's part of the game. It's the way it works.
Yep.
And you're learning. You're getting better. You haven't made any fatal mistakes. You haven't lost 100 grand.
Right.
And that's not even a fatal mistake, right? You can make 100 grand is really, it sounds crazy, guys, listen to the show. It's nothing. It's
Yeah.
just a commodity. It's just a piece of money, and the people who learn about money and how it works, they don't look at money the same way as people who are trapped in a scarcity mindset. So what I do is I give people 2 copies of my book. I give them 2 copies for one reason. If they're married, you need to read it. And while you're reading it, you need your spouse to read it at the same time so y'all can have the same experience.
Yep.
So don't let the husband or don't let the wife just shoulder the burden of the finances. Be as much on the same page as you can be so that you can share that common goal and you can move together in that common direction. Debt free is great, But there's a lot of people, it creates a lot of marital problems too. It fixes some marital problem that creates other marital problems. If you've got a spender in the family and they don't want to let go of the spending, they're going to feel constrained. They're going to feel very
Yeah.
tied down by the saver. But the saver is going to create friction because they're going, what are you doing? We've got these goals. We've got all this stuff we're trying to do, and you're just blowing it all up. And then, sadly, it's not uncommon for that mindset to drive a wedge between people. Next thing you know, they end up divorced because they couldn't
Right.
get on the same page with their money and their money goals. But I think the money vision, money goals is huge. That would probably be one of the biggest single things I would do. I probably would have gotten my wife started in investment sooner instead of just doing it all myself and,
Mhm.
and taking that responsibility. I think the more connected you are with your spouse or your, significant other, the more powerful you're going to be as a team, and the quicker you're going to get your goals and see some things. And I think it's okay to set some goals, man. I think as a young guy, married, I've been married 24 years now. I've got 6 kids. But my parents, because of their upbringing, were very, loners, I guess, individuals. So even though they were married, they were very close to each other.
Mhm.
Um, I wouldn't say that they didn't have modeled for them how to set financial goals or family goals or, how to improve their lifestyle or experiences. And money was tight, right? So when we
Yeah.
went out to dinner, Red Lobster was a luxury for us. I remember
Sure.
a lot of Crystals, a lot of Burger King. Um, some Ryan Steakhouse was a luxury for us. We might do that maybe once every month, once every 3 months or something like that.
Yeah.
And Red Lobster was even less frequent. As I got out of college, it was El Chico. That was my mom's favorite
There
Mexican
you go.
restaurant. But but as I got married, we didn't take vacations for the first 10 years. We just went to my parents or her parents' house. Actually, she just traveled back and forth. Her parents never took vacations. They just did family
Hmm. Yeah.
trips back to Indiana. And after about 10 years of married, I'm like, I ain't doing that anymore. I'm done with family vacations at family houses. I'm like, we're
Yeah.
going on an adventure. We're gonna go do something. And my wife, she had never been on one, dude. Like never.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, so for me to even bring in the concept of going to Disney World or some other place, like that was a foreign concept for her. She would never
Yeah.
had done that, and her family had never done that. So when I started opening up that door, it really opened up a vision for her to allow her to go, oh, what are these things in life that I can experience that I've never
Hmm.
experienced before? And we
Yeah.
started doing about 4 vacations a year there for a while. We were doing 2 spousal retreats where we might go. We went to Vegas one year. We went to, which I probably won't ever go back, but not highly recommend. There's better places to go than Vegas. Um, and we went, I don't know, we took a cruise one year. So like 2, so our goal was to do maybe like a spring, like Valentine's Day trip with my wife, and then
Hmm.
do a trip maybe in the fall with my wife. And then we would do, a nice vacation with my kids, and then like a smaller vacation with the kids. So, but 4 trips a year, that was kind of our goal, do one a quarter. So that I like traveling. Um, but I didn't really know to do that when I was young. But then as money started getting a little bit freer for us, we got our stuff together. We got closer to that millionaire goal. We had more disposable income, and that opened some doors for her. She's a stay at home mom, so just helping her find what makes her tick, right? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes for women that are stay at home moms, they can get covered up and swallowed up in the family and in the children, and that's not necessarily a healthy thing for the marriage or a healthy thing for her. So, she just recently had a book come out, but just finding ways to empower your dreams and goals and what those are, to find those both together, but both, in some degrees to apart, because we're two become one, but we're also individuals. And so we need to embrace both sides of who we are. And I think those are things I know now that I didn't know back then that I would have done
Yeah.
very, very, very differently. And some of them take money and some of them don't.
That's so insightful in the context that, learning how to change within that and acknowledging the differences in our spouse, acknowledging, like you said, what makes them tick, what makes them respond. I've got a whole training on just how you can learn how your spouse thinks so you can learn how to talk to them so you can understand each other. You can have that conversation. You can both be on the same page with your words and with your emotions and with your feelings around money. And I think it's really interesting that, you talk about how she began to realize what other opportunities there were. And a lot of times we get in this routine and this pattern, whether it's with our marriage, with our money, with our jobs, with our family, and just with our life in general. And we become accustomed to it, and we don't think of what else could there be or what other opportunities exist until it's basically forced upon us to experience that. And then we're like, oh, this is really cool, I never tried this before, we should do more of this. So I love the fact that you're able to help her experience that, and that's such an interesting dynamic within a marriage that I think is really powerful. Man, Tony, there's so much that you shared today that just really resonates with me. I think it was going to resonate with our audience. Love the stories, love the insight, love just the wisdom that you shared from your years of experience, from your marriage, from your financial success. I think it's very, very applicable stuff that honestly, like you've said, anyone can do this if they work hard, if they put their mind to it. It may be harder for others than some, but everyone has the opportunity. Anyone can, if they go for it. I know you've got the book, The Millionaire's Choice. You got your podcast. Where are some of the ways that people can really connect with you, find out more about you, work with you? How can they stay in tune with Tony Bradshaw?
Yeah, so obviously the millionairechoice.com, that's my primary financial brand where I do a lot of my posting and things. TonyBradshaw.com is another option. It's more of personal stuff there. I do 1 hour of financial coaching. So I set aside 1 hour of every day so that people can be coached by me for free. So I believe with just 1 hour of interacting with somebody, I can help change the trajectory of their lives, kind of catapult them. Just like I did when I was 25 years old. There was a before, there was definitely a before and after. And sometimes I just want to help people nudge them into that after zone. And so that's why I give away an hour of my day for people. I'll probably do that for the rest of my life. I don't know. It's this year, it's 2022. Maybe I keep doing it in 2023. But I really enjoy talking to people. I had a call recently from Jamaica, a young lady that was in career transition. And it's just fun, man. It's just fun being able
Yeah.
to give some insight and wisdom to somebody who is, especially in their 20s and they've got their whole life ahead of them. And, having that kind of information is huge. So I do that for free coaching. You can book that at themillionairechoice.com. There's a sign up page for that, and just check it out. And I look forward to talking to anybody that wants a little guidance.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show today, for sharing your story, for giving some very practical tips and some wisdom around money and marriage and finances, and just really, really enjoyed learning from you. I know I always have a fun time whenever I can take something away from a guest episode, and that has happened again today. So I appreciate you sharing those stories with us, and we'll be sure to include everything there in the show notes for you, and look forward to visiting again sometime.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Austin. I appreciate it.